Welcome to US Daily Brief YouTube channel. Ukraine is responding in a way it has never done before in its more than 9-month war with Russia. On Tuesday, the Ukrainian military's achievements were jaw-dropping, as Ukraine demonstrated its ability to penetrate hundreds of kilometers of Russian airspace when it attacked 2 Russian air bases just 150 miles away from Moscow. In the first days of the war, the Ukrainian army, which many Western countries did not even think to be successful, is getting gigantic day by day. The arm of the Russian army is broken. Ukraine's attacks on Russian military targets have become increasingly bold in recent weeks, as Kyiv tries to take Vladimir Putin's war against Ukraine to the domestic front. Ukraine's daring drone attacks on 2 military airports, deep within Russian territory, is an indication that the war is continuing with developments in favor of Ukraine. Ukraine appears to be exposing Russian air defense gaps with long-range attacks. The Kremlin is in shock as Ukraine has demonstrated a new and obvious ability to penetrate hundreds of kilometers of Russian airspace with its attacks on 2 Russian airspaces. The Soviet-era ENGELS II air base, named after communist philosopher Frederick Engels, is home to Russia's 121st Heavy Bomber Aviation Regiment, whose missiles include the Strategic Bomber Squadron of the Tu-95 and Tu-160, whose missiles have devastated Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Explosions occurred at Russia's Engels Air Base, which is home to Russia's strategic bomber fleet, hundreds of kilometers from Ukraine. The Engels base, near the city of Saratov, is located at least 600 kilometers from the nearest Ukrainian territory. It's natural to think that, if Ukraine can hit Russia that deep, it can hit Moscow too. 2 strategic bombers were damaged in an explosion at the Engels Air Force Base in the Saratov region of Russia. 3 Russian soldiers were killed and 4 wounded in the events that took place in the Saratov region. Ukrainian presidential advisor Oleksiy Arestovich noted that Engels is Russia's only fully equipped base for Moscow's massive fleet of bombers used to attack Ukraine. There's a truth that this attack has taught Russia. It turned out that small drones, the danger of which has been neglected, can attack strategic aircraft. The massive Tupolev long-range bombers Russia deployed at Engels form a significant part of its strategic nuclear arsenal, similar to the B-52s the US developed during the Cold War. Russia has used it in its campaign since October to destroy Ukraine's power grid, with almost weekly wave of missile strikes. Russia's targeting of civilians reflects the growing desperation of Russian President Vladimir Putin. 260 and Tu-95 type strategic bombers, which can fire cruise missiles, one of the weapons used in the attacks on Ukraine, are also deployed at Engels Air Base. Any Ukrainian attack on the Engels II base is likely aimed at disrupting Russia's plans to hit Ukrainian infrastructure. Ukraine took another step toward achieving its goals by attacking the Engels Air Base. Engels II is a key airspace for Russia's strategic aviation. Russia is trying to deploy strategic aircraft to airfields after the attack on Engels Air Base, but all this complicates the operation against Ukraine. We think the claims that Ukraine has had an 85% success rate in shooting down Russian missiles are credible, and that the Iranian drones Moscow is using to target key energy infrastructure are exhausted, but a replenishment is expected. When we look at the statements made by Ukraine, we see that Russia has taken great wounds. Since the days when the Ukrainian warriors counterattacked, the damage suffered by the Russian army became legendary. Vladimir Putin's supposedly powerful army has tasted failure many times over and continues to do so. Moscow has previously accused Ukraine of attacking its territory, but these alleged attacks affect Russia more deeply than their predecessors. It is clear that Ukraine's attacking so deep inside Russia would embarrass the Kremlin. It is also possible to say that attacks on airfields in Russia's interior will deal a strong psychological blow, meaning that Moscow needs to think much more carefully about how to keep its long-range bombers safe. Russia responded to Monday's attacks with what it called a major attack on Ukraine's military control system, but Vladimir Putin continues his habit of targeting innocents in Ukraine, despite everything. Across Ukraine, missiles razed homes and cut off electricity, but the impact seemed less severe than the dams that plunged millions of Ukrainians into darkness and cold last month. The Ukrainian Air Force said it shot down more than 60 out of about 70 missiles. President Volodymyr Zelensky said at least 4 people were killed in the village of Novosofivka, 25 kilometers east of Zaporizhia in southern Ukraine. A missile tore a crater from the ground and completely destroyed a house. Ambulance officers collected 2 bodies lying next to a wrecked car. Olha Troshina, 62, said the dead were her sons, who were standing by the car when the missile fell, and neighbors who saw off their daughter-in-law. Now that his house had been destroyed and winter had begun, he had no idea where to go. "We have nowhere to go back," said Ola Troshina. "It would be nice if it was spring or summer. If it was a hot season, we could do something. But what am I going to do now?" The plight of innocent Ukrainian civilians trying to cope with the hardships brought by the winter season is very sad. Try to put yourself in the shoes of people in this situation for a minute, and I'm sure you will feel what they went through in your heart. But the Russian leader insists on not thinking like us. Russia offers a military justification for attacks on Ukraine's civilian infrastructure. Kyiv says the attacks are aimed at injuring civilians, which is a war crime. Ukrainian Defense Minister Resknov said, "They do not understand something. Such missile attacks only increase our resistance." No political talks were held to end the war, while Moscow, Kyiv, and the West insist that it will not negotiate unless it accepts sovereignty over its claimed Ukrainian territory. Kyiv says Russia must abandon all its territory. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said on Tuesday that talks would only be possible if Russia achieves special military operation goals that it has not defined itself. Russia must and will achieve the goals it has set, said Dmitry Peskov. Despite all these events, about 20 military bases of the Russian occupation forces in the direction of Zaporizhia were destroyed in the past week. Ukrainian armed forces repelled Russian attacks near 13 settlements. The last day, the Ukrainian armed forces repulsed their attacks on the settlements of Bloshchanka and Bilohorivka in the Luhansk region of Russia, and the settlements of Berestov, Bilohorivka, Yakovlivka, Soledar, Bakhmutske, Bakhmut, Optin, Klishchivka, Andriivka, Maryinka, and Novomykhailivka in the Donetsk region. Russia has already lost about 91,690 soldiers in Ukraine. Ukrainians stunned both the world and themselves by resisting an all-out military attack by a superpower that would crush them within 2 days in 2022. Millions fled to safety. Millions endured shelling in basements and bomb shelters. Tens of thousands of people died in the cities destroyed by the invaders. Millions gathered for a nation's cause, armed, volunteering in ambulances, carrying food to villages at the front, caring for each other's children. Ukrainians see war as a both national and a personal existential struggle. Military experts, who once debated whether Kyiv could hold out for more than a few days, debate whether it could win the war outright. Kyiv says it will not stop until it removes all Russian forces, including a territory occupied since 2014. Kyiv continues its successful and determined progress. The year 2022 is about to end, but the end of the war has not yet come. We will be here to inform you about the new developments in the Ukraine-Russian war.